Well, there are obvious issues with gasoline prices across the country. You don't have to go very far, and you run into folks that are frustrated with the price of gasoline. I don't know a single person that's not filling up their tank across the country and saying, this is killing my food budget, my housing budget, everything they have to be able to deal with. I asked some of my field team, just as they're out and about this week across Oklahoma, to just snap a price to the gases that are going on right now this week in Oklahoma. And you can see in Kingfisher, just for regular unleaded here, Kingfisher $3.99 in Tulsa. QT's the winner here at $3.53. We'd love to see that around Washington, D.C. or many areas of the country. If you get into Marshall, Oklahoma, $4.29. You get to El Reno, Oklahoma, $3.95. In Moore, Oklahoma, $4. And in Caney, Oklahoma, $3.99. This is just what's just happened in the last 24 hours around my state. What's interesting is people look at this and they fill up their tank and they realize it's $75 to $125 to be able to fill up their tank with gas. What that really means for them is they can't travel more, they can't get out more, they can't do more because they understand I just can't afford to be able to do that. That's the real life decisions of Americans as they process through all this. Where did this come from? Well, currently the Biden administration is saying this is all Putin's fault. We know that's just factually not true. The price of gasoline rose from the day that President Biden came into office until the beginning of the war in Ukraine, $1 a gallon. $1 during that time period. How did that happen? Was that because of oil companies? Is over in the House of Representatives, they're dragging in oil companies, executives, and saying you're gouging prices? Well, actually, let's look at the math on this. Day one of the Biden administration, they stepped up and canceled the Keystone Pipeline. And people keep saying, why does that matter? Well, Canada produces heavy crude, the same type of heavy crude that comes out of Russia. So we're either going to buy that heavy crude from Russia or from Canada. And day one, President Biden said, I want to buy that type of crude from Russia, not from Canada. The other factoid on this is interesting is the president's just done a release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The release he's doing from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for a short period of time for the next several months is almost exactly what would be coming from the Keystone Pipeline every single day from here on out. So while he's trying to manipulate the prices with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, you can actually increase production and input into our country from an ally like Canada that'd be reliable and predictable that actually bring prices down. What else did the President of the United States do? Day one, cancels out the Keystone Pipeline. Day one, he looks at all the Trump administration policies that do anything with energy and said, let's reevaluate all of those. Day one, he shuts down everything that's happening on federal lands as far as federal leasing, no federal leases. And he steps out and says, well, there's 9,000 that are out there. They've got plenty of options on it. He knows the math on this. Most of those are checkerboards with at least just one section tested out, but they're not going to really do production in that area until they have all the leases around it. And he knows the game on that. And so he can say there's 9,000 leases out there and really know as well that nothing's really going to happen with it. 24% of the oil that we get in the United States comes from those federal leases. So when he has now still not reopened the short-term moratorium on federal leasing, he's cutting off the future of oil into our country, and it continues to accelerate prices. We've dealt with nominees that have come across the floor in the Senate that were the selection from the Biden administration, that their whole focus was how are they going to take away access to capital for oil and gas companies. And literally this week, the Biden administration announces that they want more American companies to do more production, but then this week they release their budget after saying to American companies, why aren't you producing more oil? The Biden budget has 15 brand new tax proposals that they've got on their production of oil and gas. So at the time that they're saying to companies, y'all should produce more oil, you're the problem, they're not looking in the mirror, seeing 15 new taxes that they're releasing, trying to cut off access to capital, trying to be able to make us more focused on what's happening internationally. There are lots of issues the Biden administration needs to look at. This is not a result of Putin's war. This is a result of Biden policies. And everyone knows it. And they can try to change the subject all they want to, but everyone knows this is a direct result of the Biden policies that are here. That's our frustration. There is a way to produce more American energy. There is a way to be able to bring prices down. They're just not willing to do it at this point. There's a whole series of us that are going to have the opportunity to be able to talk through this, and I want to be able to check in with everybody. Thanks for being here. Senator Barrasso's up next.
Well, thanks, Senator Langford, for your continued leadership on this. The American people are paying the price and feeling the pain of the policies of Joe Biden as President of the United States, and specifically with energy. This past weekend in Wyoming, people were paying about $2 per gallon more than they were the day that Joe Biden came into office. That means they don't have that money for other things in terms of their lives, in terms of their children. The people are having to change the way they drive, they shop, and they live as a result of Joe Biden's policies, which has driven up the cost of gasoline all across the country. So what's he going to do about it? Well, he made a speech and he said he was going to release energy from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This is the third Hail Mary pass he's thrown on this in the last 6 months. This is going to be incomplete just like the others, but he's going to continue throwing Hail Mary passes all the way through the election in November, at which time the American people are going to stand up and say, we're done with this, we're going to turn over the House and the Senate. The real concern I have at something like this release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is it doesn't actually produce one more barrel of American oil. And today we're producing 1.3 million barrels a day, fewer than we were back in 2019. And some people call this release a gimmick. I say it's much more dangerous than that. And the reason is because he's drawing this emergency supply down to a level that we haven't been down to that low level since 1984. So what happens if there's a real emergency? Look, the American people get it. They know what we need to do. We need to produce more American oil and gas. The president knows what he has to do, but he's refusing to do it because he is so beholden to the liberal left. He needs to allow for sales of oil and gas leases on public lands. There's not been a single one since he's been president. Needs to actually then give the permits to drill there. There's not been any of those since he's been president. And there are over 4,600 of them in limbo waiting. And then he has to allow for the pipelines to be built to move the oil and the gas to markets. Not allowing those either. Well, the president has a lot of people he wants to blame. He has a whole long list. We can go through all of them. He wants to blame COVID, supply chain, energy executives, Putin, all of them. The American people see through it. They're not buying it. So today in the House, the far left, the liberal left, the climate elitists are holding another hearing with energy company executives. They must have amnesia because they held a similar hearing in October, except what they were yelling about in October is they said, you shouldn't produce more energy, don't produce more. Today they're browbeating him to produce more. This is unbelievable. We continue to hear empty words from a Democrat Party and from a president, and their tank is empty today.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Under President Biden, we know that inflation is at a 40-year high, and all of our consumers are feeling this. All of our Iowa families, American families, are feeling pressure in their pocketbooks. Every good and service that they need on a daily basis has gone up in price. So with our gas prices, the average in Iowa this week hit around $3.80 a gallon. And we have seen in other areas around the United States where it's gone up over $5 a gallon. And for coastal elites, you know, maybe that's not so much. But I know in my home community of Red Oak, Iowa, that's a lot of money. And our families don't make that much to pay that, especially when families in our rural areas have to drive farther to go to work, when they have to commute longer distances to go to school. It's really impacting their ability to meet their bills on a daily, a weekly, and a monthly basis. So what are we seeing? Instead of addressing the issue, what we see is that the administration is doubling down on their deranged climate policy. And the president's budget contains billions, not millions, but billions of dollars for electric vehicles. I don't know many folks in my neighborhood that can afford to go buy an electric vehicle. Okay, so what we see, they're doubling down on these crazy policies that are out there that most normal Iowans just don't think about. They are just concerned about how they're going to make ends meet. So they're ignoring, the administration is ignoring biofuels, which is a cleaner, more affordable, renewable energy, which is made right here at home. But again, all of us are going to say this today. We need to increase our energy production right here at home. It's really important, including biofuels. I have the Homefront Energy Independence Act. This would replace Russian oil with clean, American-made renewable fuels that are available right now, creates jobs, it lowers gas prices, and reduces dependence on our adversaries, including Iran and a number of other bad actors. But bottom line, you'll hear it again and again. Under Biden's policies, Americans are able to afford less and less and less. And unless the administration starts moving away from the liberal left, Iowans and Americans are going to continue to feel the heat in their pocketbooks. Thank you.
As I have said before, the problem is that the oil is in Louisiana and Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas and North Dakota and Alaska and in many other states. But the dipsticks are in Washington, D.C. This is a problem of simple economics. And in my opinion, the Biden administration will continue to kick its own ass politically and do what may be irreparable damage to the American people's pocketbooks and standard of living and to America's national security until the president transitions to an all-of-the-above energy policy. Take national security. We know that it will be very difficult, if impossible, to defeat Putin until we cut off his cash flow. You can't cut off his cash flow until you cut off his oil and gas exports. You can't cut off his oil and gas sales, his exports, much of which go to Europe, until Europe has a way to replace the fossil fuels. America has a way to help Europe replace those fossil fuels, except for one problem. The Biden administration has put its boot on the neck of the oil and gas industry. And until the Biden administration takes it off, the American people and the Western world will continue to suffer.